technology in the home, like so, actually I have a couple of friends that have zero technology in the home, then I want to applaud you. But if you're not going to do that, I think that some of the things that I'm going to share to you with you today is very, very important, especially when we are in the midst of raising our children, like, in their elementary or grade school age, and even toddlers and even babies. It's the perfect time to literally start implementing these great tools that many smart people have developed through for long, long time. So I want to first start by saying that unfortunately, there are no cookie cutter solutions when it comes to your children. Your children are unique. They're very, just different. Obviously, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So when looking at your children and implementing these things, you should really look to yourself and see, how you, the tendencies that you have. And I think that'll be helpful, but there are no cookie cutter solutions when it comes to your children. So I'm going to share with you some problems and issues that surround video games and smart devices and technologies. And hopefully we'll get to some good guidelines that will help you find a healthy solution for your family. Because at the end of the day, the family has to work together to come up with a healthy solution, or regulations for that matter, for technology, video games, and smart devices. So before we begin, though, I forget the gentleman's name. Was it Timothy that loved video games?
That was
It's
Eric.
Eric. It was Eric. I don't know how old you are, Eric, but I'm almost 50 years old. I have a 20-year-old son, but I still play video games. I don't just play video games. I consider myself a gamer. So I don't think that game is, it's a terrible thing video game is a terrible thing to be doing, but there is a problem side, but I just don't, I'm a very serious gamer, but I am not one of those kind of guys that go play for 4 or 5 hours straight. I lose interest after an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I just move on. And because my son grew up playing video games. He grew up literally on my lap while I had a controller in my hands. But because he has similar tendencies as I do, he's never gotten addicted to it, even though he has full freedom to play video games as much as he wants. Actually, my son and I, we kind of went on this a challenge where we're going to play video games for 24 hours. And, but I can make it, but he did it. But, we just did it for fun, and, he lost interest in the middle of it and just went to sleep too. So it's not one of those things where, there's a cookie cutter solution. And if you do this, you're going to run into these problems. And if you don't do this, you're going to run into these problems. There isn't anything like that. It just means that we're all unique. Like kids could spend, like I said, play just 15 minutes and immediately, they're showing issues and they're showing addictive behavior and really, really bad behavior 15 minutes into video games. Whereas, some kids just play for an hour or two and just turn it off on their own. And it's just really, really interesting how that works. But you guys have to, parents have to be the one that's observing their children. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, how the importance of parents. Kids cannot do this on their own. It is the parents that have to get involved in their lives to control and to help and promote a healthy environment for the family when it comes to technology, video games, and later on social media. All right. So let's first talk about the problems. Why do our children get addicted to video games and other devices? right now, a lot of studies are comparing video game and smart device addictions to that of drugs, alcohol, nicotine, gambling, and pornography, etc. This is happening because the video game and smart device addictions are attributed to the same hormones that is released when addicted to drugs, alcohol, nicotine, etc., etc. And this hormone is called dopamine. And I'm sure you've heard of this dopamine. This dopamine is, sometimes called happy hormone or a rush hormone, a pleasure hormone. And we like dopamine. We need it. Actually, when we actually experience dopamine coming out, we actually want more of it. But it becomes dangerous when dopamine is released for the wrong stuff, obviously, right? I'm going to show you guys a brain. I hope that there is no brain surgeons in the room today, because this is not, like a total scientific division, but I've divided the brain function into the front half and the rear half. And front half is, we have the frontal lobe, right? And it's responsible for like the motor function, problem solving, spontaneity, memory, language, initiation, judgment, impulse control, which is very important, social behavior. And the rear is responsible for sensation, perception, attention, and obviously the vision part is also back there. Now, I have a question for you guys. What part of the brain do you think video games and smart devices trigger? The front or the back? Front? Front or the back?
Front.
If it's,
I
you think
say back.
you say back? Yeah,
I say
a lot
back.
of people. You say back? Okay, a lot of people actually do say front because they see, the people actually that like video games will say stuff like, because it does help with the motor functions, right? And if the game has something to do with problem solving, it can help you. But most of the time, right, video game, especially for children, it triggers the rear. It triggers the rear side of the brain, like the sensation, perception, attention, vision. Have you ever the newborn parents will experience this very, very soon. When a child starts crying, right? And it's just out of control, and you put a phone or like a tablet right in front of their face, they just stop crying, right? They stop crying because immediately the rear, is triggered, and they're just, they're mesmerized by what's in front of them. And then your children, very young, will start figuring out how to swipe, right? And they'll learn how to, push buttons and to make things pop up. It's pretty amazing how fast they pick it up. But it's sure, it does have a front function, but most of the time, it is not so much the front part, it's really the rear side. When they're first introduced to technology, they're triggering the back side of the of the brain. So when we are engaged in these activities, like the technology activities, like video games, social media, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, that's social media, the dopamine hormones are released, right? Because we're happy, right? And then we have joy, and we have the thrills, right? That comes with video games, and we want more of it. And when we are successfully satisfying these needs, and sometimes we push ourselves to satisfy these needs at all costs, then we become addicted to this behavior, right? And that's the addict, right? And most of us, we don't have to work hard to develop the rear, okay? We don't have to work hard at all, because it's really sensation, perception, attention, and vision. But the front part of it, we have to work hard to develop it, right? It's the motor function, problem solving, memory, language, judgment, impulse control, social behavior. These are all things that we actually have to work hard on. There was a study done actually in Korea by National Geographic. It was a long time ago. It was like 1997. They studied two video gamers. One was a amateur video game, and one was a professional gamer. And they, stuck all these these devices on their head, and they monitored what was triggering in in the brain function of the amateur video gamer and the professional video gamer. And the amateur video game was just really active in the back. They were seeing what's going on, and they're trying to play this game, and just the rear end of it is really, really active. Where the professional, their front part was active, which is very interesting because they're playing for different reasons, right? The amateur is playing for pleasure, whereas the professionals are playing to become the best at it, right? And they have to develop their front side. Now, obviously, these pro gamers didn't start by developing their frontal lobe. They actually did it from the back, but when they made it into a money making or their living or their vocation, they had to change that, right? And they had to develop that. And so we have to really work and we have to help our children develop the front side. And if we are diligent in developing the front, then what we end up doing is we're helping to develop the children's executive functions. And executive functions is pretty important, okay? Executive function is defined this way, and this was defined by Harvard University Center of the Developing Child in 2012. The executive functions is executive functions help to filter distractions, prioritize tasks, set and achieve goals, and control impulses. This is very, very important. And this is something that we want our children to have, right? Especially when it comes to technology. And there's three parts to this executive function. And the first one is working memory. It says it governs our ability to retain and manipulate distinct pieces of information over a short period of time. We need that. Children need this. But mental flexibility helps us to sustain or shift attention in response to different demands or to apply different rules in different settings. Very important. And obviously the third one is, and it's very important, is self-control. It enables us to set priorities and resist impulsive actions or responses. So what happens, obviously we have to promote our children. So, parents of young children, we have to be very intentional about developing our children's executive functions. And when we do this, our children are going to have great working memory. They're going to have great mental flexibility and basically have self-control. In other words, we're going to have great kids, right? Great kids that know their place well, great kids that are very creative, and we have kids that are very self-controlled, right? Talk about ideal kids. And those are the kids that we're going to help raise if we develop these executive functions. Well, the problem is that let me show you this brain again. And this time I put in the front of the brain, trainer, and the rear of the brain, monster. I'm not saying that your kids are monsters, okay? But sometimes they might be, but I'm not calling your kids monsters. But what I'm trying to show you guys here is this. If we develop the front, the executive functions, and it's the trainer is developed and are able to enjoy the monster that's living in the back, okay? Meaning, you guys all know the movie How to Train Your Dragon, right? How to Train Your Dragon. Let's pretend like the back of the brain is dragon. It is dangerous if you mistreat it, but if the trainer is well trained and is well developed, he'll be able to enjoy the monster in the back. However, if we're not intentional about developing the executive functions or the front or the trainer, and we're constantly feeding the monster, what ends up happening is the monster will eventually grow bigger than the trainer and will start attacking the trainer, would be, and it becomes really, really bad, will end up swallowing the trainer by, by whole, right? And in my experience of counseling families, I've seen many, many times when the monster has attacked the trainer, and it becomes really ugly. And I'll give you an example of my son's friend. This kid was so bright. I remember when he was graduating from middle school. I mean, the guy, they give out these medals, right? For achievements and stuff. And this kid he had like 9 medals around his neck. He could barely walk, his neck is falling. And I think my son had just 1. But anyways, this guy, everybody was saying, like, oh, this kid is like, he's gonna do it all. He's gonna go to Harvard and all of this stuff. And he had such a bright future. Well, that summer, his parents gave him as a gift a gaming PC, and he ended up he started playing this game called League of Legends. I'm sure you guys know that game. And in the beginning, it was just fine. But when ninth grade, he went through ninth grade just fine. And then in 10th grade, we started to see problems. And then what ended up happening was, he started like getting stomach aches for no reason, right? I mean, obviously he's faking it. And so like he wants to stay home. And like and this is, it happened, it happened all the time. But when he realized that, it's not working, he started, ditching school, right? So now you see the monster is getting bigger and bigger, and it's starting to attack the trainer. And so, and at some point it just became, I don't know about, when we were young, it was easy to get away, with ditching, but these days it's not. Parents eventually found out that he's skipping school to play video games, and it was just really, really ugly. It got really ugly to a point where they're just constantly shouting at each other. They stopped talking, and it got really ugly. And then one night, the mom came home, and she came home. The whole house was dark, and she saw the flickering light coming from his room. And when he was just totally immersed in this game, and she just had it, And so she just, without even talking to him, without saying hi, she just went down and just unplugged the, game from the wall. And, he got so angry, and he started hitting and, kicking his mom. And that's when I stepped in and, started counseling. And it just, at that point, the monster has completely devoured the trainer, and the family, the family is so interesting. In the middle of the counseling, and they sent him to live with his grandma in Korea, of all places, like the best place, for the gamer to go. And I lost contact with them, and I don't know what became of him, but it's a really extreme case of the monster in the back just devouring the trainer. So it gets kind of ugly, So there's and this is very interesting. There's another. I don't know why, but I think League of Legends has some factors that are pretty um, addictive. Because I have another friend. His son was exact same story. I mean, junior high or middle school, he's awards up the wazoo, and he got all kinds of medals, and he was Harvard bound too. I don't know why all parents think that their kids are Harvard bound, but sorry. Okay, so I don't know why, but he was another promising kid, and he fell into League of Legends also, and he actually he wanted to drop out of high school so that he could become a professional gamer. And my friend was so heartbroken, but he chose not to. So he chose to let him do whatever he wants because he didn't want the families he didn't want the family to break apart. So he chose to. He was a pastor too, by the way, and he chose to let the child do whatever he wants. And but he said, uh, dinner time, you have to eat dinner with us, and you have to go to church, and we still have to function as a family. He got that promise, and then so he dropped out of school and tried to become a pro gamer, but he didn't become a pro gamer. He just wasn't good enough. And so but interesting enough is that at 24 years old, he simply just quit video games, just quit straight up. um, can anyone guess why he quit? You could unmute yourself and let me know.
My guess is at some point he hated it.
At some point he hated. Thanks
I
for
don't know.
playing,
I
but
heard people who play tennis all the time, or like anytime you have to do something too much and it becomes your life, a lot of times
uh-huh.
people end.
I could see that happening, but this was not the case for him.
Did you get a girlfriend?
Yeah, bingo! Wow, I can't believe you guessed that. That's amazing. He got a girlfriend. Basically, the love monster ate the video game monster, right? So, but that's what happens, right? So he quit, and amazing thing is last year he got married to that girlfriend, and it was one of the most beautiful weddings. He ended up like going to got his GED, went to City College, and went to Cal State Long Beach, and he's doing very well now. So I think that's I'm sharing that story because I'm going to eventually talk about what the importance of families, right? So if we don't if we just keep going at this rate where kids are just the parents are, unfortunately, there's all these studies, and I couldn't do it because of time, but the parents are, unfortunately, right now feeding the monster. Let's just be honest, okay? And I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later. But so what can we do about this? How can we help our children um, develop the trainer and allow the trainer to enjoy the monster? When I say that, so we can't get rid of video games and technology from our children. I think that's impossible, right? I think today somebody, I think Jeannie said that your kids are watching TV, right? I mean, it's just part of our lives. We can't do it. We can't get rid of it altogether. I have a friend who doesn't have any technology. I don't know how he does it, but it's an amazing family, right? There's nothing weird about that family, but they refuse to have technology in their home. But for us regular people, what can we do about this? So let's talk about some solutions at this point. How am I doing on time? I got like good 45 minutes left. Good.
Yeah.
All right. So time is of the essence. Okay. Time is the problem, and time is the solution. When I say that, time, we just, kids, when I say that parents are feeding the monster, is that parents are allowing too much time, right? And time is the solution. How we spend time is very, very important. And I hope that I can convince you of this solution today, because how we spend time, whether it's individually or group by group, or in today's context, how we spend our family time shows our value. Okay, and this is, I think, the single most important thing. No matter who we are, it doesn't matter who we are, we define ourselves by the value systems by which we live. And this is where I think the formation comes into play. But as a Christian family, we do place and we should place more weight on certain values than others, right? I think we would all agree there, right? And so I want to, so what are some of the core values of a Christian family? And this, I'm a pastor, right? So this makes sense to me. I hope that this core value system makes sense to you. I believe that I have listed them in the order of importance, okay? And then the first thing should be our Christian value, right? Number two should be, it comes second, should be family value. Number three, educational value. Actually, after number two, I don't care what comes after that. But as long as Christian value is number one, family value is number two, everything else can come after that. And I think I'm going to be honest with you, if you have the first two right, everything else is going to be healthy. But that is not the reality of what we are facing. The reality is this, okay? The Barna Group, and you should know the Barna Group does, you know, it's Christian surveying group. They surveyed 1,000, I believe, around 1,100 families, and asked children 14 to 17 years old what their after-school activities look like. And this is what came up. And I want you guys to guess number one. Unmute yourself and guess number one.
Tutoring.
Tutoring? Tutoring. That's a very good guess. Wow. Okay. Anybody else?
Is computer time generally?
Computer time. I think that goes into like video games and social media.
Okay.
And, you know,
Work, studying.
studying, the tutoring things. So maybe education. Okay. That seems to be the
Hanging out with friends.
hanging out friends. Hanging out friends was, I believe, like number 7 or 8. It's not number one.
Yeah, Arena said sports.
Sports was way down there too. Yeah, believe it or not. Well, the right answer already came out, so I'm just gonna say it. It's education. They actually homework is number one. So a lot of kids are spending most of their after-school time during their homework. Okay.
That's so sad.
Yeah. You know what? Last place is?
Reading the Bible.
Yeah, it is. Reading the Bible is last place, which is pretty sad actually. And when you think about it that way, right? Education being number one, and Bible reading, and this is Christian families, right? Bible reading and being the last place, it kind of shows the reality of our core value. It's literally flip-flop, right? Education is number one. Family value is right there, number 3, so it's in the middle. And Christian, value is dead last. It was dead last. And and this is a very interesting thing. I was doing a parenting seminar at my church a long time ago, and during the summer, I had an opportunity to guest speak for a retreat, and there was over 350 kids there, youth kids. And I asked the pastor in charge, "Hey, I'm preparing a parenting seminar. Do you mind if I do a little survey?" And I did that. And I asked the kids, what are the top 3 things that bug you most about your parents, right? And number one was by far, it was like 70-something% was hypocrisy, right? And number 2, you know what number 2 was? I was so surprised by number 2. It was, I was baffled. And so I did my parenting seminar based on number 2 because it was so surprising. And it was that parents don't say sorry. Isn't that interesting? So anyway, so I did my parenting seminar called "I'm Sorry" and made my parent. Well, first thing I did was I went down to my son and said, Curtis is my son. I say, I'm sorry. And he's like, for what? I don't know, but I'm really sorry. But the hypocrisy part was the fact that, you know, they found their parents to be, you know, hypocritical Christians. You know, they saw their parents being these perfect Christians at church, but when they came home, they were far less than that. In fact, a lot of them wrote, I've never seen my parents read the Bible. So, like, why would a child read the Bible if they don't see their parents reading the Bible, right? So, you know, it starts from the family and it starts from the parents, and it definitely trickles down. So what we see is that the core value is flip-flopped. In fact, not only is it flip-flopped, we have to add a different kind of value that I don't even know what to call it, because look at the three of the top five is technology, right? So so then the value looks like this, okay? Screen value, right? That's number one, right? There's three of the top five has something to do with the screen. Watch TV, stream, right? Social media, that's on your phone for the, you know, 40% of children 13 to 17, that's amazing. That's screen. Video games is screen, right? So not only have we flip-flopped, we've actually introduced to our family a value called screen value. And I can tell you right now, I think a lot of us are guilty of this, but it is the truth. Right now, the reality of our value system starts with the screen, and then it's education, and then it's family, and then it's Christian value. And so right now, that's the reality of. Are you asking a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you're talking about Christian value.
Right.
Is it how are you defining Christian and family value? Because these were the first two values that you suggest as core values.
Right.
Could you just define those real quickly as to what you say? Is it simply reading the Bible? Is that Christian value?
No.
Okay.
Christian value is everything University Presbyterian Church represents and teaches. So I don't want to go into too much. Yeah, that's the truth. You guys have to go to your pastors and say, look, I want to implement a Christian value in my home. And I guarantee you, Pastor soon will hook you guys up. All right. And if Pastor, or Dr. Newman will hook you guys up. All right. But because I have to get to the other stuff, this is it. Okay. The family value is, and this is where I'm getting at. And the family value, we have to put the screen value, whether it's the video games, all the screen stuff, we have to implement it into the family value. That makes it healthy. If it goes outside the family, it becomes unhealthy. Does that make sense? So, so this is the reality that we have, and this is the reality that we have to change. I know that was a cop-out answer for Dr. Newman, but that's the reality of it. I need to, but if we have a little bit of time, I want to discuss that, okay, if later on in the discussions. So that's the reality. Children are spending way too much time on the screen. This is a lot of information over here. So, can you guys read this? Okay, good. So this is it's just a huge block of information. Children are watching the screen for about 7 hours a day. Okay, and now this is including computer time to do their homework and stuff like that. But 7 hours a day, they're looking at a screen. Okay, that's not healthy. Such exposure, psychology today says that such exposure is dangerous for still developing brains of children. It's just if you look up gray matters, too much screen time damages the brain, and Christianity, I'm sorry, I keep saying Christianity today, psychology to it, 2014. You'll see a list of it. I've listed some of them. These are all like a little bit of repeats, but it's really clinical and technical. So if you guys have time, go ahead and read the article. It's really, really, really good. The visuals, we talked about this earlier. Visual stimulations created by the screen cause dopamine hormones to come out. Now that's something that we talked about earlier. And if we keep allowing to do that, obviously dangerous, okay? So we talked about the same hormone being released. It's related to that. Number 4 is sleeping issues. Now, this is very important for especially the young ones, even Jeannie's kids that are 8 and 10, right? 8 and 10, was it? Something like that. Sorry.
That's Bill's.
Is that Bill's? I'm so sorry. But 8 and 10, it still applies because this, sleeping is the most important thing that kids are lacking these days. Lack of sleep, obviously, this is a study that lack of sleep negatively affects academic performance, period. And here's a most dangerous thing. I don't know if you guys know this. The modern screens that we're looking at, whether it's iPhone or super high def, ultra high def, what it does is actually it's called blue light, and it's trying to mimic daylight, and it actually does mimic daylight. Well, the problem with the ultra high def and the screens that mimic daylight, which is almost all of them now, it delays the release of melatonin hormones that help us shut down. Like at night, melatonin comes out, and then we literally just shut down and we just pass out and go to sleep, and we have a good rest at night. And what happens is when we have this guy Stephen, I put it here. Stephen Lockley of Harvard Medical School said that there's as much as 3 hours of shift occurs due to blue light. So let's say that there's a blue light coming in and you turn off the blue light and say, I'm going to rest. It takes 3 hours for the melatonin to come. So let's say your kids are playing video games or watching YouTube on your phone at, like an hour before they go to sleep. Granted, they might be sleeping, but the important hormone, the melatonin hormone that needs to come out to give them the full shutdown rest will come out 2 hours after. So they're losing that 2 hours of sleep. They might as well not be sleeping. Does that make sense? So it is very important that there's that 3 hour shift. And also there is it makes it even worse if they play video games, because video games in general cause this thing called flight or fight syndrome. And this is true for every single video game. If some of you guys are old enough to know what Pac-Man is, a game like Pac-Man, something that's simple as that introduces flight or fight syndrome, right? The Pac-Man, you're supposed to run away, or you eat that little yellow medicine, you go wah, 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 and then you go fight. So it's either fight or flight syndrome, and this is every single video game. I wish I could go into like different kind of video games, but that the most hottest game right now, you guys should know, is a game called Fortnite. And the genre is, and this is among kids. And right now, Call of Duty Warzone is out, and all of these games are in the genre of battle royale. And basically, usually it's 100 of you guys being dropped in an island, and you're supposed to survive. You're supposed to kill each other, and you have to be the last one up. And that's the price. That's the whole premise of the game, is for you to outlast 99 other players. That's very stressful, and that's the game that I actually play a lot, and it's a very stressful game. And I think because I'm almost 50 now, I can't take the stress too much. I just go, what, an hour of stress is good enough. So I just play. But if you play for an hour, you're never going to get that good, And there was a time when I used to play 3-4 hour sessions, and I was pretty good. I was very competitive at that time. I could call myself a gamer at that time, but these days I can't play long enough, and it's because of the stress. I don't want to deal with the stress. I have stress of life, right? And I don't want to add other stress to it. But kids eat this stuff up, and they love it. And what's happening is, if you're causing, let's say, the flight, like it says here, flight or fight syndrome, it releases adrenaline and cortisol hormones, right? And this is the same hormone. If you have a gun pointed at you, right? It's the same hormone. It releases adrenaline and cortisol. So like, or somebody trying to hit, I don't know if you guys remember the Northridge earthquake. It was a long time ago, but you have this adrenaline and this cortisol. It makes you, I don't know if, trust me, it's true. With that adrenaline and cortisol, I tossed my sofa. I picked it up with my two hands, and I turned it over my parents, and that is a very, very powerful hormone. And then after the earthquake was done, I tried to put it back into place. I couldn't even move it. You know what I mean? So it's pretty amazing thing. And our children, when our children play video games, those hormones are released. And if you couple that, so we got the adrenaline, cortisol, and we got the blue light, right? 3 hours might not be enough for our children to have that melatonin shift. Does that make sense? So it is important that we literally, so time, when I say time is of the essence, that's what it is, right? And so it is, I want you guys to consider that. There was I didn't put it here because it's a completely non-academic study, but a parent, there's an article on it, I found it online. He did a test just out of curiosity. He had all of his kids and some volunteers, like 6 kids, and they did a little bit of different, like kids playing 3 hours of video games, kids playing 1 hour of video games, and different times of video games. And then they all like, he took the kids that are always like go to bed and they just knock out, right? So he put them all, through those studies, non-academic study, and he just tried it, and then said, okay, everybody go to sleep. He found that kids that play 3+ hours couldn't fall asleep right away, right? So if parents are willing to even go distance like this to test their own children, how they can, how they react to video games. I'm not saying you should try it on your own. I think you just kind of take the study for what it is. And I think that 3 hours is just too long. 3 hours is too long. I mean, and so I think that especially if your children are going to like 7 o'clock, usually these days, you guys put your kids to bed around 7 or 8, right? Eric, Ginny, no, 9, 10. Most of my friends around me, they put their kids to bed like at 7, 8 o'clock. It's so shocking. But so that means that if they want them to get the full amount of rest, that means by, like let's say you put your kids to bed at 9 o'clock, all blue light and all video game or flight or fight devices has to turn off at 6 p.m., right? So I think that is something to think about. So when I say time is important, that's what I'm talking about. And so if we continue on this path, if we as parents are continuing, and the study shows it, is 7 hours a day, that's a long time, right? If, let's say, for example, our kids come back home around 3 o'clock, and let's say they spent 3 hours, doing their homework and used computer, so 4 hours, right? They're using their phone, video games, whatever. That takes them, let's say, to like 10 o'clock, right? Why are kids looking at TV, playing video games till 10 o'clock? I'm not saying you guys are doing it, but that's what the study says. And number one, kids are going to sleep kind of late. And number two, they are literally playing video games until right before they go to sleep. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but one of the things that make that almost impossible to enforce is if you allow video games to go into their rooms, or computers or anything like that to go to their rooms, forget it. It's impossible to enforce. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. But rules and regulations, all of that kind of stuff is, I leave it up to you guys, and based on your child's personality and their character and how you guys, implement those values that we talked about, you guys will have to start making regulations. But if we continue on this path, if we could continue to just allow our children to just be exposed to technology like this for hours and hours, we're gonna be feeding the monster. That's the whole point of this. And at the end of the day, we'll be hindering the development of the executive functions that our children really, really need. You remember I was kind of joking about how all parents think that their kids are going to go to Harvard. I think if we work on our executive function, I think we can probably say, I think our kids got a chance at Harvard if these executive functions are you guys develop these executive functions really well in your kids. So I just want to encourage you guys to think about that. But so in doing this, we have to create a healthy environment for our children. So let me look at my time. So before we go into creating a healthy environment for our children, anybody have a question about this time and the whole brain thing? And by the way, I'm not a brain doctor, so.
Can I ask a different question? So
what is question?
What is the third thing that bugs the children most from the parents?
What was it? Oh, I don't remember that. I don't even remember the third one. Yeah. Oh, that's what you're. I only remember the first two. I think 3. It was just so it was so mixed that it really wasn't important. I just remember the first two. It was like I remember the first two like it was yesterday. But the 3, 4, and I just wrote, but just 3, 4, 5, 6. All of this stuff was just all mixed everywhere. Yeah. But it was that was an eye-opening experience for me. Yeah.
So a real quick question. I don't know. So I know on my Apple phone, it has that little bedtime button on the bottom.
Yeah.
That blocks out. It's supposed to make it easier to sleep if you use it for screens.
Yeah.
So do you know of any studies that address that? Does that have any effect on how?
Yeah, exactly. I know if you guys, iPhone has this, and most of the phones now have it. But you know how like even your computer screen, you can change it to have a night mode, right? I don't know about bedtime, but it's a night mode where, right. And I'm sure you noticed that it makes the screen really yellow, right? Orange. And so that's what they're trying to make that, the blue light or the daylight mimicking light to be lessened. But to me, that's just the gimmick. I don't think that's just, they can't have kids, going to sleep early and not looking at screens. So they just put that up there. But it's still bright light coming straight into the eyes. I don't know how much that's going to help. But yeah, it's, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there aren't that many like studies that are conclusive, recent years, because technology is changing so fast. They tend to have studies that are pretty old and it's pretty general. Yeah. But that's a very good question. But I would turn it on. I have it on. But then I work in creative field. So on my computer, I have it off because that changes the color of, whatever I'm working on. So for me, I have to have the, that blue light hitting my eyes all the time. But I would turn it on. Absolutely. That's a good question. Anybody else? So I'm going to move on to, I'm just going to give you guys just a quick overview of creating a healthy environment for our children. And it's really up to us, right? Our children cannot do this on their own. This is something that we have to create for them. And so how do we do that? First is core values. And we talked about this, right? We have to be very intentional about, setting and prioritizing and what our core values are. And we have to be intentional about it. And this is the cold-hearted truth. So I think that this is something that we really need to think about. Number two is something that we can all just kind of implement right away. But we really can't, I'm going to be honest with you, you can't really do two regulations without the core values. But like I said, we talked about this core value. I don't know how you guys feel about this. And Dr. Newman has got a big responsibility of installing and implementing and empowering your Christian values to, for your homes. So he's got a pretty big responsibility, but we'll talk about this a little bit later on if we have time. But number two, family value. I think we really do a great job. I grew up, my parents were immigrant parents, and I don't know if you guys know, dysfunctional family. We're not a dysfunctional family. My wife's family is dysfunctional, but my family is called non-functional, right? So meaning I never saw my parents. You know what I mean? My parents both had two jobs, and I just kind of raised myself, the three kids. And so, but these days, I think especially parents my age and even the millennial parents are very intentional about family values. And I think I've seen people do a really great job. Like my friends, two friends that have no technology in the home. Actually, one guy has no technology. The other friend, he's a complete weirdo. He has you've heard of open door policy where, all the doors are open in the house. He doesn't have doors. He doesn't have any doors. All the doors, the bathroom, the bedrooms, and all that stuff is gone. Just everything is wide open, and so you have no privacy. And he has like 5 kids. He has 5 kids, and they all live in this house, and they all have to shower, change, do everything without any privacy. And these kids are great though. They're one of the most greatest, but it's kind of a weird rule, but it promotes family value. You know what I mean? And it's a weird family value in my opinion, but it works for them, and they're a great family. I love hanging out with them. So, and educational value, I don't even have to sell that one because it's like the thing showed, it is the number one on most parents' thing. So, core value. We have to be very intentional about it. So let's go to regulations. So I want to introduce you guys to the 4 C's of regulation. You'll see that I have a lot of 4 C's, 3 T's. I just kind of, for the sake of my dissertation and stuff, I kind of made all of this up. So I think my dissertation is going to end up becoming a popular book, and Dr. Newman's going to help me write it. So I started using all this gimmicky stuff. But anyways, the 4 C's of regulations is correspondence, carry out, consistency, and communication. And correspondence is, I just briefly go over what I'm talking about here. Correspondence is that rules and regulations, or even the punishments, it must line up. It needs to correspond with the core values of the family. And that's why you need the core value first. Because as you create rules and create regulations, and when I say regulation, I'm talking about the law of the land in the house, right? And that rule or the rules or the law has to correspond with the core values, or I think that the laws become kind of meaningless. So correspondence. So does the rule correspond with the core values of the family? Number 2, does the child understand the rule, right? The rules have to be, parents make rules all the time, and a lot of the times they make it right on the spot, right? And the children, when I'll tell you guys a little bit later on, children are not they don't understand the rules. That you have to explain it to them. Is the rule acceptable and reasonable, right? And that's somewhat biblical, I think. But is a rule acceptable and reasonable, right? There's a huge difference, guys, between negotiation and explanation. A lot of parents negotiate their rules, and negotiation is never ever good, because remember, the rules that we're going to be creating is based on core values, right? And core values cannot be negotiated, right? So the rules have to be explained, and the children cannot negotiate with the rules. Never ever negotiate. And let me tell you what I mean by negotiate is this is an easy one, right? If you take out the trash, you can have 30 minutes of video games, right? And my point to the parents who uses negotiation like this, I'm like, so don't you think that they should be taking out the trash anyway? I mean, take out the trash. Why are you putting a reward on something that they're supposed to do, right? And when you start negotiating, the actual action becomes about the video game, not the actual family value, or them adding into or contributing to the family cause. So never ever negotiate. And there's plenty of those things going on, like walk the dog, you get 30 minutes, or wash the dishes, or get 30 minutes. And that's something that should not be used. Can we realistically enforce and regulate the rules, right? I mean, this is a pretty easy one, but we have a hard time. I mean, like they say, you can't have a boyfriend until you're 25 or whatever. Those kind of rules I'm talking about. Like video games, if you don't turn off the game right now, I'm gonna throw away your video game, right? I mean, can you enforce that? Can you realistically do that? Now there's parents, I don't know if you guys see YouTube. There's a lot of YouTube channels where parents are making their kids like take a hammer to their video games and smashing it, because that was the rule, right? And they're enforcing it. I think that's kind of cruel and unusual. I did that one time. I told my son had a rule when he was young. You're not allowed to bring video game to the table, right? To the dinner table. And he was always good about it. But then one time, sometimes, they have like radars, and they could walk, while playing the game. I don't know how they do that, but he got kind of carried away. And next thing he realized, his foot was inside the dining area, right? And then as soon as he changed, he goes, oh, and then he stopped. But the rules are rules, right? So I took it and I snapped it. It was a little Game Boy. I snapped it in half and threw it in the trash, right? And then I had to buy it again because next Christmas. So I threw it away, and I had to spend some more money. So kind of rules that's kind of enforce, regulate. I don't think we need to go there. It's kind of funny watching those YouTube channels, but I don't think it really works for a family. I think it's traumatizing, if anything, for our kids. But you can negotiate, I think, the punishment. Let's say, for example, you guys are talking about the rules, or you guys are doing as a family, you guys are making these rules. And by the way, when you make the rules, kids shouldn't be there, right? It should be just the mom and dad. You can negotiate the punishment, right? And say, if you break the rule, what do you think the punishment should be? And they say, I don't know, like no games for a week. And if it's reasonable, I think you should do it, because kids are more likely to go through with the punishment if they put that punishment on themselves. So, and this is the most important thing. This rules must be written down on paper. It should never be vocal. It should be written down on paper, and they should sign it. Okay. And you could always bring it. That's because it is in writing. Mom and dad has to really work hard. And like I said, it's like a constitution, right? The law of the land, or law of the Kins, or law of the Newman, right? And you have to take some time and make this rule. There is my son and I, we did this when he was in third grade. we made a rule, the law of the land, and he signed it, I signed it. And so, yeah, and by the way, I added on my contract, I guess it's a contract of the law, and the last subject was, I will pay for my dad's student loans. And so he signed it, and I have a copy of that. So he says, okay, I'll, right? So, but you know what's so funny is that I lost the contract, but he still think I have it. So you guys write it in paper. If you guys, I might be able to. I have a copy of it actually. I actually have I have an unsigned copy of it. If you guys, I'll email it to Janet, and then maybe she could share it. But you guys should come up with your own. I mean, But anyways, that's very important. Put it in writing, and both of you guys sign it, and then enforce it. And the second C is obviously carry out. Okay, punishment, whether it's the law, whether it's punishment, it needs to be carried out. When you guys, you have to consider, when do we carry out the punishment, right? Should it be right now? Should it be later? When is a good time? This is something that you guys have to ponder, because you remember that example of the mom, just going in and just pulling the power. That's just not wise. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. And number two,
a couple of things, Moksanim. Shigan, the time.
What time is it? Okay, I'm almost done.
And secondly, when you carry out, I'm just going to throw this out there because to me this is critical. You said, should we do it right away? My wife and I have always had a policy that we never carried out in anger, because
right.
then
I'm getting to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. So when carrying it, you should never let them off the hook. Okay, that's something that's a really bad practice. It must be carried out. I know it's not easy. It's not easy. Sometimes, your kids have these googly eyes, and, you're like, oh, they're so cute, and you want to let one slide. But if you let one slide, the rule becomes meaningless, and you'll never be able to enforce it again. So that's why the punishment and it has to be reasonable. Okay. And when carrying out the punishment, having another replacement activity really helps. Okay. A lot of the times, parents, they say turn off the game, and they turn it off, right? And you will see her. And I don't know if that gentleman that had an 18-year-old daughter still here, but if you take away their device or turn off their device, you'll see them just space out for like an hour, like they're just going like this. They won't do anything, right? The reason why is because of that dopamine hormone needs to go down, right? The monster has to go to sleep, and that takes time. So if you kind of turn it off, and then you have like a replacement activity for them, it's really, really helpful. So please keep that in mind. And consistency is rules and punishment must be enforced consistently. And when I say that is consistent, carry out is consistency too, but rules must be applicable to not just kids, but everyone. Like, for example, you say no technology on the dining table, that goes for mom and dad too, okay? Because that's fair. And number two is, and I see this all the time, and if you guys have multiple kids, like, you have an older child, and because he's old, he gets like 30 minutes more or an hour more than the younger one. That doesn't work. It might work for a really short time, but eventually you're creating a competition situation, and it's not good. It should be even throughout the whole family, not just kids. When it comes to rules and consistency, there's just, no one is above the law, okay? Because it's the law of the land, all right? So that's, pretty much the 3 C's. I know I'm giving you guys a whole ton of information, but, I'm sure you guys are doing fine. All right, last C is actually, is where, Dr. Newman was going, is communication and timing. And there's 3 T's here, right? Timing, think, and teamwork. Okay, timing is very important, because timing is everything when communication is necessary with your children regarding games and smart devices. We have to observe our children. We have to make a habit of this, guys. Instead of reacting, we have to observe the state of our children. The reason why I say this because is we have to discern whether or not our children is in the monster state or the trainer state, okay? So, and we should never, ever speak to the monster, okay? Ever. So if your kids are in a monster state and you can tell, and trust me, the only people that are going to be able to tell is going to be mom and dad, okay? Or an expert, or, that spends a lot of time. When your child is on a monster state, you should never talk, just stop and just kind of walk away. I have a case where the whole family, the whole family problem went away when dad stopped and just didn't, say anything. And the child started turning off the video game when he just started doing things on his own when dad just stopped yelling at him. You know what I mean? So it's very, very important. And so there's no use talking to the monster. Always, always talk to the trainer. And the most important part, and this is what Dr. Newman was going at, the stopping is going to give us, the parents, the opportunity to calm our monster down. Because usually, we're a monster too when we approach our kids to communicate. And it's very important that we calm ourselves down first, okay? And the two trainers talking is so important. And sadly enough, so this is something that I implemented with my child kind of late. But once I started like calming, we just talk, we just all calm down and, hey, let's talk, sit down, and we would just sit down at the dining table and we just talk, and it's so much better. Oh my goodness. So you have to stop, and you have to stop when you see something you don't like. You have to stop and consider the timing. Okay. We just got a couple more to go and we're almost done. Think. So second T is think. And in think, there's 3 P's. I'm sorry for all of this stuff. But first one is purpose. Okay. When you think, what is that you want to accomplish through this communication? Okay. You just have to plan it out. Okay. So number 2 is plan, right? Purpose. What is the purpose? And number 2, plan. We have to plan out the purpose and communication strategies. We have to plan it out. And when we're doing this, you guys, trust me, we have to let our trainer to come out in order to do this. So by the time you're done with this, you'll be fine to talk to your child. Now, the third P is we have to pray. Okay. Once we have the purpose, we have the plan, we just pray and get ready. And then once you have that piece of God that transcends all understanding, right? This is when you talk to your child. Okay. Teamwork. And this is the last one, guys. I'm going to stop after this. Teamwork. Mom and dad have to be united in every way. Okay. And this is something that is, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before. Usually I'm not a big fan of good cop, bad cop. Okay. I think that one person should be the good cop and the bad cop, right? If you guys, and both, it has to be good cop and bad cop, but if that's really tough to do, I understand. And it might be even healthier for you, one person to be good cop and bad cop, and the one person just says, hey, talk to dad or talk to mom, right? And that's where it ends with them, right? And there's just one point of, flowing down of the rule and the carrying out the rules. So, but you guys have to be united in all fronts, even though you disagree, right? Let's say we make a mistake. And trust me, I do this all the time. I make a mistake, all the time. But if my wife stood there and said, you idiot, right? What do you mean? That's not going to work, right? That's really bad, right? But my wife usually just stays quiet and then tells me later, hey, you're an idiot, right? Later on. But it is very important to, you support each other in front of the child, right? Even though it was a mistake, you can nudge, right? Like the rule says, we need to do this. You can just kind of use the rules and the law of the land. But if it's going out of control, extinguish that as soon as possible using the timing, and you could, but do not disagree, right? You can butt in, you can stop it, you do whatever, but do not disagree. Work together, and this is so important for me. Just work together to implement the Christian value to your children. And this is where I think that we don't want to hear, our children call us hypocrites. And that's, I think, one of the worst things that I could possibly hear, and it's sad, right? So it's, I think we should work together. It shouldn't be just one-sided. We should, the whole, the mom and dad, reading the Bible together, and I'm talking about separately, and family reading the Bible together. All of those things, I think, is really, really important, and it's got to be teamwork. Dad can't say, I think Bible is important, and mom says, hey, no, he has to do homework, so forget the Bible for now. You know what I mean? Those are the kind of things that I think mom and dad has to agree on. So it is. So, I know it's a lot of stuff that I poured on you guys towards the end there with all the C's and T's and P's. I will, after I talked to Janet, and when she told me that you guys were relatively young parents, I kind of changed things around. So I'll work on this outline, and then I'll also send it to Janet, so you guys will have it. And and I think, hopefully, it'll be helpful. Okay.